What is up, everybody? I'm NoLucksGiven here with the finals of the Marvel Snap Wars League. We've got Ramnstexx up against Roy, two fantastic Marvel Snap players that have bested a field full of great Marvel Snap players, myself included, to make it to the grand finals. And before we get into these games, two quick caveats. The first is that these games were recorded last weekend. I was sick, so this is as soon as I could record this. I wanted to get it out before the Golden Gauntlet 2, so I've been working super hard to get better so that I could share some high-level Marvel Snap battles before the Golden Gauntlet 2 tournament this weekend. And because these games are a little bit old, there's been some new card releases since then and an OTA, but I still think that this is going to be a great look at some high-level Marvel Snap. The second caveat that I do want to bring up is that this was played on a phone and then streamed to me through Discord, so the games are going to get a little bit laggy. I just thumbed through them real quick. I'm unspoiled. I don't know what's going to happen in these games. I'm going to watch them live here and then record some commentary. So let's get into that, and then afterwards I will go over all of the decks that both of these players used. This is a closed deck list format, so I don't know what they're playing. They didn't know what each other was playing, and they can switch decks in between the best 2 out of 3 Conquest series. I do know what both players are playing for this first match just because I went ahead a little bit, and maybe I won't spoil it. I will tell you that Roy is playing Arishem, as we can see right there with a 21 card deck, and we can see a Zabu, Iron Patriot, Gwenpool, and Venom for Ramnstexx. Not a typical card that we would see in a good stuff card, Venom, and that's because it is actually a Phoenix Force deck that is getting a little bit spicy here in the finals. Also has just some good stuff cards with Iron Patriot, potentially can give you a random card to win a match like Galactus here, and Dazzler comes down from Roy. That's just going to be a random Arishem generated card, but Gwenpool is a card that can potentially pump up like a Nimrod, so that's kind of what I'm expecting to see here alongside the Phoenix Force and Venom. But we also see Firehair, the original Phoenix Force, joining Ramnstexx's hand. A little bit of Clog over from Roy, a Debris, but the Iron Patriot is now going to get reanimated over in Asgard after being destroyed in the Death Room. Is that what it's called? Destroy Room? I forget, because we're watching this in a different language here. But we are going to see this second Iron Patriot grab a Cull Obsidian, which is perfectly set up in this game with those Debris Rocks and the Zabu. We're going to see Gwenpool battle for Asgard to get the discount on Cull and the +1 card from Asgard here. And we can see the game has already very much deteriorated, but we are now going to see a Legion come out from Roy, and that is on Isle of Silence. You're really going to need my commentary on these because it's going to be tough to tell what is going on through the pixels here, but all 3 locations have now become Isle of Silence. We do have a discount on the Cull Obsidian in hand, but of course we did not get that extra draw. And then Killmonger, kind of an interesting one, potentially leaning more into the Firehair synergies than necessarily it just being like a typical Phoenix Force deck. I mean, Killmonger can destroy Human Torch, so we might see a Human Torch come out later, and then Killmonger destroying these rocks could also help to keep the Dazzler at bay, but all 3 locations are Isle of Silence, so Dazzler is going to just be kept at bay because of that. I don't know exactly. It looks like Galactus has 10 power, so I think the Gwenpool triggers went 1 onto Venom and then 2 onto Galactus. We could be setting up for a spicy Galactus center for a surprising final turn here from Ramnstexx. I don't know, that's pretty bold. That's pretty bold. Nico with the location change off the top. They are going for the Galactus. Oh, that would be such a silly thing to see here. But what's the other play? Okay, I mean, yeah, Shang-Chi killing that Isan and that Sasquatch, I feel like that's too juicy, and then you can move your Iron Patriot center for 8, and then accompany it with a 5 power Venom to battle for all 3 locations. I do feel like, yeah, that's got to be the play. Or you could have gone Firehair Nico, but either way, this is most points on the board and a little less silly than that Galactus. As much as I wanted to see it, we're going to see a much more reserved play here from Ramnstexx, and Roy just battles for the rightmost location with a Shang-Chi of their own, or I'm sorry, the leftmost location with a Shang-Chi of their own plus a Valentina. That means Ramnstexx is going to take this with a Shang-Chi on those pair of 610s plus a Venom to get them over the top in the center. And there we go. That is 4 cubes, a snap from Ramnstexx that was able to take it home there and grab the Victoria. And despite the, oh no, that's a Valentina on Roy's side of the board. And we see Misery join Ramnstexx's hand here. Misery, Gwenpool, Venom, and Phoenix Force. That first location is Necrotia. Location number 2 is going to be Atlantis for +5 on a solo. I just feel like I should translate what all of these locations are in case anyone is watching that is less familiar with this game and can't tell what's going on through the pixels. Nova going to be the card from the hub, and then I believe that's an Iron Patriot with a variant that I am unfamiliar with. Yeah, that is going to be an Iron Patriot and a snap from Roy. Now, interestingly, that Killmonger could destroy the Nova that Ramnstexx is playing into Necrotia. That would translate into a 4 power Killmonger and then a 4 power Iron Patriot, but Ramnstexx does not want to play that for 2 cubes, so they are going to escape. And that kind of makes sense to me, though, to be honest. I don't know exactly what is going on here exactly with Ramnstexx deck. This is not an archetype that I think is like super well trodden, this sort of Firehair Misery deck. So I'm curious what Ramnstexx has put together here. It kind of just looks like good stuff cards, and maybe Phoenix Force to get something back. The biggest combo with this deck, I feel like, is Nico. If you can get Nico on the double up mode and then are able to get it back with a Phoenix Force or something like that, that could be pretty interesting. Bar Sinister playing Firehair there, and then we also have Shuri's Lab as location number 2. Shuri's Lab could be an interesting Phoenix Force location, and it does look like Iron Patriot is going to get played there this turn. Not a great follow-up for that next turn, but Roy doesn't have any play here at all either. Interestingly, though, wow, okay, that Hobgoblin could be pretty neat, but for Roy, Roy will now have access to 4 energy this turn. I believe that is a Monster Island, which we can Shang-Chi at. Next turn, this turn, a Venom into Iron Patriot makes a lot of sense. Venom will be 18 power in Shuri's Lab because it will destroy the Iron Patriot for 9 before doubling up. So that actually does seem like a pretty good way to get a cheap Hobgoblin and then win Bar Sinister, but it doesn't look like Ramnstexx is going to go for it, instead just opting to get that Firehair on the table, and they're actually going to win the Shuri's Lab, I believe. Regardless, Roy might be setting up here with a Galacta for those other 2 locations. You're definitely going to want to get Galacta down, so that does make a lot of sense, but now Hobgoblin could come down with priority, and we see a snap for Ramnstexx and a retreat from Roy because they've won that Iron Patriot battle, and that's just a snap condition for sure. So we are now going to see Roy down to 5 cubes to Ramnstexx's 9. Going into round 4 now, we've got Venom, Shang-Chi, and Cassandra Nova. Well, Cassandra Nova is definitely a really good card to potentially destroy and bring back with Phoenix Force, getting multiple triggers, but in this matchup, you do not need that. You can just play Cassandra Nova on the final turn of the game and feel pretty dang good about that. And it's actually surprising that Ramnstexx is up 4 cubes and hasn't even drawn Cassandra Nova up until this point in the game. We also see the Hood, and that center location is going to be Genosha, which is at the end of turn 5. This is a brand new location. The first location is Eternity Range. Whoever's losing there on turn 3 gets a rock. Second location is end of turn 5. Each player destroys all but their highest cost card at that location, and that could have been a reasonable spot to throw the hood, so I'm kind of surprised that that didn't go for it. Lechugia, location number 3. Instead, Ramnstexx kind of negatively battling for Eternity Range, looking to get a rock, but are they potentially going to run out the Cassandra Nova here on turn 3? That's going to be a big showing of your hand if you do that. But also gives your opponent a rock. I mean, but what's the curve here? Are we setting up to misery? This is definitely a little bit of an interesting curve. No snap before the Cassandra comes down. Actually, I take that back. That is a snap from Roy as Ramnstexx looks to drop this Cassie. And I feel like Ramnstexx is potentially going to let that snap resolve and stay in the game. They are instead going to go for the Cassandra into Genosha, and it is a Gore from Valentina that comes down into the Eternity Range for Roy, and it is hard to tell. I think that is a 16 power Cassandra Nova that is in that center location. So this turn we could see Misery eat the hood. They'll still have to contest with their rock at that location, but you'll grab another demon and potentially set you up for a final turn of double demon in Lechugia plus a Shang-Chi on the Gore. We'll need to play a few more on reveal cards, but that's certainly possible before the game ends. We could also just see a Gwenpool here. Gwenpool into Genosha is definitely an interesting play because that would destroy your Cassandra Nova. We're going to see the Gwenpool come down into the Eternity Range instead. Galacta into Genosha from Roy, and a Human Torch, despite Roy not being the Phoenix Force player. I believe a Gwenpool trigger went on Zabu, on Shang-Chi, and I think a second one went on Shang-Chi. I think that is a 7 power Shang-Chi. Pretty tough to see what exactly is going on here. Oh, we could see that is huge. So they are going to Venom the Cassandra Nova with Nico's copy card. I said Nico is basically the only combo card that I saw in this deck, and there is another combo that Nico can do, copying a card and then using Venom to destroy that big Cassandra will get you like another 20 power Venom. It does mean that you wouldn't be able to play Shang-Chi alongside it on the final turn, so it's not the cleanest, but it certainly represents a lot of power, and I do believe Ramnstexx is still eyeing up that play. They might also opt to throw out some additional power in some other locations with a demon here before they do that. No, it is just going to be Misery and Nico. No, Zabu. Yeah, Zabu makes more sense. So it's going to be Misery to grab another demon, and then we are going to see, okay, so good play from Ramnstexx, not playing into that Shang-Chi. They would have definitely got blown out there if they had just tried to make a huge Venom right into Roy Shang-Chi. Instead, they are going to set up for double demon plus a Shang-Chi of their own. Looks like Shang-Chi got another Gwenpool hit, demon got at least one Gwenpool hit, and I'm not sure what else exactly has happened there. In Genosha for Roy, both Shang-Chi and Galacta are 4-cost cards, so they are both going to survive, but I do think Ramnstexx can still reasonably battle for all 3 locations here. Might not be super easy, but Shang-Chi, of course, will win on the left. And then you probably just have to commit with both of your demons into probably Genosha because it's not the Galacta location if you choose to stay in this game. I could also see just retreating. Oh, that's another option we're looking at. Nico, and could Nico potentially pump the Gore? If we can pump the Gore into range that it is Shang-Chi-able, we're actually battling for all 3 locations in a really clever way here. I can't tell what the Gore's power is at right now, but it doesn't look like it's going to be easily Shang-Chi-able, but the idea would be to... Wait, what are we even Shang-Chiing? I have no clue what the power is over in Eternity Range. I'm just assuming that, yeah, I think we're just assuming that the Gore is at some point going to be Shang-Chi-able, but we're no longer moving around that Shang-Chi with the Gore. I mean, but maybe you want to, just to pump up their Gore so that it's definitely Shang-Chi-able, because it looks like I'm seeing 11 power there right now. We are also going to see an Echo come down into Eternity Range, Death into Lechugia, and that is just a rock. But will Shang-Chi hit the Gore? Shang-Chi misses. They needed to play Nico. I'm actually not even sure if that would have done it. This is really tough to see with the low resolution here, but Shang-Chi on the right would have done it. That would have killed that Death. The Gore was able to stay below Shang-Chi range though. If I had to guess, it looks like they have 18 power there right now. The Echo is 5, the Human Torch is 5, and the Mic is 1, so that's 7. So, shouldn't that be, I'm sorry, that's 11. Oh, that means 7 power is left from the Gore. Right. Yeah, I did the math really quick. So that was only an 11 power Gore, meaning Nico would not have made it Shang-Chi-able. That was a Gore that was also shrunk because it was -3 from Valentina, I believe is how Valentina works. So we are going to see Roy take that one and tie it up here. 5 cubes apiece. The hood comes down into, oh, what's that center location called? Is it called Aunt May's? Oh yeah, Tia May. Yeah. So Jeff, the baby land shark, lands into that location. We're going to see Iron Patriot in that first location, which is no 1-cost cards can get played here. And our third location is Project Pegasus for +5 energy this turn for both players. We could see Stegron knock out the Jeff, but then Stegron, of course, is the Iron Patriot card that you're battling for the discount on. I mean, sure, Cassandra Nova will just earn you the discount on Iron Patriot, though it does seem like Ramnstexx is not super likely to go for that. Maybe they're eyeing up a misery play onto the Iron Patriot, so that way they can try to get a discount on a better card next turn. They are actually going to go for the Stegron play. It's a little bit of a bait, but it could allow them to do something silly like misery and then re-trigger Iron Patriot, re-trigger Stegron? I'm not sure. See, if I was playing this, I might consider trying to get Misery out of my hand as soon as possible, so that way I am not destroying that many things, and that way I'm getting as much value out of Misery as I can, but Misery also possibly just at its best destroying the hood, creating another demon and taking that -3 power hood off your board. So maybe that is what Ramnstexx is eyeing up. The Stegron is going to win the Iron Patriot battle, but it just discounts itself, so it doesn't really get too much value out of that ultimately. And I think this turn we might see the Misery come down into Aunt May's. Yeah, okay, so that makes a lot of sense. Just really looking to get an extra demon with this Misery in most scenarios, I imagine. And this would allow you to play double demon plus Shang-Chi, though this Shang-Chi is also Zabu discounted at this point. So we could even weave in a Nico on the final turn, or we could go for a Phoenix Force right here. Now, Phoenix Force is currently just looking to bring back the hood, so it is a 3/2 that gives you a demon, but one more demon could get played alongside a 3-cost Shang-Chi on the final turn, so that's kind of cute. And the other thing that I see here is that you could Venom and Phoenix Force this turn. You could Venom before you Phoenix Force, and that way you have some other interesting options to potentially bring back right here. I'm not sure if that is something that Ramnstexx wants to go for, but you could Venom your Cassandra Nova and then roll a 1 in 3 that Phoenix Force gives you a moving Cassandra Nova. That seems pretty cool. They are instead going to go for that hood, which is a 2-power hood that gives another demon, setting up for the final turn. And we've got Spider-Man 2099 plus an Iron Patriot win for Roy, but 2 locations currently being won for Ramnstexx, and then a pretty killer hand that they can play with. Shang-Chi has no target though, and Ramnstexx has priority, so this Shang-Chi is not looking super fantastic. We are really potentially just eyeing up a Venom. And one other thing, 3 1-cost cards, 2 demons and the Nico, which is on double my power mode this turn. none of which can get played into that leftmost location. That leftmost location might just get filled up with a Venom, but yeah, you can't play your Nico there. So those cards are probably just going to get played into Ant Maze, and I suppose you could throw one over into Project Pegasus. Your opponent kind of needs a Shang-Chi in order to beat you there. Your Zabu is at 5 power, so that's kind of interesting. I mean, yeah, there's no reason not to play Shang-Chi, I suppose, but it's definitely not doing too much here. Interesting. But I do think that with all of these points from all of these demons, Ramnstexx is looking to stay in it. Yeah, they get to drop 10 power in the center. That'll be a 6-point lead. They get to drop 5 power over on the left, but they're already winning there by a considerable amount, especially when the Jeff moves out. So how much power has Roy put into the center location? That's the big question. They need a lot of points over in Project Pegasus, so I'm not sure how much they were able to commit to Ant Maze. They do have another Mockingbird that will be enough, and then Shang-Chi will be enough to take Project Pegasus. So Roy will grab the win and put Ramnstexx down to just 1 cube. It is now 5-1, an incredible comeback here from Roy, and they have been able to consistently Shang-Chi these Cassandra Novas to stay in it here, and Ramnstexx now has to win the next 3 games. We are in high stakes mode, but also Ramnstexx is down to their final cube, so they've got to win the next 3 games to take this series. And we see Nico on the +2 power mode. That sets up reasonably well into an Iron Patriot, so I think we are going to see that curve come out there. That'll be 7 power in the Iron Patriot if they decide to play that center as well. And that center location is going to be White Palace, which gives Ramnstexx an Arishem and passes a Killmonger over to Roy. And that Killmonger could be killer. We have seen Ramnstexx lean on these demons going later into the game. We are also now potentially looking at an interesting Killmonger Nico Firehair shenanigan, and we see Loki come down from Roy. Roy is potentially going to get a chance to play with some of Ramnstexx crazy cards. Also, the turn 1 Loki is going to mean that this turn 3 Cassandra Nova doesn't hit as hard. It's not going to be for like 18, it is just going to be for 11. Still pretty good. But the Rocket and Groot will take 1 extra point off of that, so that Cassie is now in there for 10. Still Shang-Chi-able. That is a very, very important number. Roy could have their own Shang-Chi, or they could draw the Loki'd Shang-Chi at some point. Killmonger, will both players have access to a Killmonger right now? We know that. Roy, interestingly, doesn't, so there's always some weird asynchronous information with White Palace, but Roy doesn't know that Ramnstexx knows that they have the Killmonger. Hopefully y'all followed that. I've talked about it previously on some shorts on the channel, but I think it makes for really interesting dynamic when Ramnstexx knows about the Killmonger in Roy's hand, and Roy certainly knows, both players know, that Ramnstexx received the Arishem. I don't think that there's much doubt there, but there is some ambiguity potentially over what Roy may have grabbed. Misery is going to re-Loki, which will reset all of the Cassandra Nova debuffs that Ramnstexx has placed into their deck, but Cassandra Nova might be just doing what it needs to do this turn. Oh, here if your Cassandra Nova gets Shang-Chi'd, then your Firehair just Cassandra Novas them. Oh, that is really interesting. You can also just intentionally do it, and it looks like that is what Ramnstexx is going for. They are going to Venom their own Cassandra Nova to throw all of that power onto the Firehair center. This looks really good for Ramnstexx. If we do see a Shang-Chi come into the vault this turn for Roy, then they will be able to battle for that location, but we will still have an absolutely massive Firehair, and we could potentially just see like Shang-Chi or something come out into Atlantis on the final turn. That's not actually going to do it at this point, so I'm not sure what they will need to have, but they could play one big card into Atlantis, potentially pumped up by these Gwenpool triggers as well. We are looking at potentially a 17 power Shang-Chi. Into the vault, it is going to be Nico for +2 cards onto a Wolverine, so they might be able to find the Shang-Chi, but that is not going to be able to win them the vault. That location is going to be locked up. Invisible Woman finding a Shang-Chi could be interesting though, and there goes the Cassandra Nova into Atlantis. Interestingly, a Shang-Chi will currently tie up the game for Ramnstexx in Atlantis. It will tie up that one location, and I guess that's what you gotta play for. Just Shang-Chi in Atlantis, that's a 17-point Shang-Chi, and if your opponent has found Shang-Chi off of either their own initial starting deck or either of these Lokis that they can play center, Roy will have this first match. Oh wait, that's it. That looked like a 13 power Shang-Chi, which makes sense. Shang-Chi should stay odd, and they're instead just going to go for a Shang-Chi center. That I don't think is good, but you know what I kind of do like, and it looks like they might actually be eyeing up here instead, is just a play that puts a little bit more points into the center location and potentially still tries to play around a Shang-Chi. But can they come up with that? I mean, it would be Arishem if they could play it, but Arishem costs 7, so it's actually just a dead card for Ramnstexx. I do like this 18-point Shang over into Atlantis. Battle for all 3 locations. And the Rocket and Groot moving over will win Atlantis for Roy, and I'm assuming that because, well, Roy's going to stay in it regardless. There's no more cube doubling at the end of these turns, but let's see what is under the Invisible Woman. We do find a Shang-Chi, and Roy finds a win, taking that one last cube there from Ramnstexx to win the first battle. Going into match 2, both players were allowed to change decks, and we do see a deck change here from Ramnstexx. I was not able to see if Roy is still playing Arishem or not, so that is a little bit of a mystery. But Ramnstexx, after my own heart, is playing Sasquatch. Oh, and the peak, they're going to lose that Sasquatch. They had a turn 3 Sassy from a turn 2 Mysterio, so that is a big bummer to lose that. Taking an Goliath from Roy does kind of make me feel like they might still be playing Arishem. There are some other decks that play the Purple Cloud, but this is going to be Move Bounce. Okay, that can sometimes play Goliath and also Heimdall and Cosmo we've seen on the top end of some Move Bounce lists, with a Iron Fist and Aranya coming out to start. Sasquatch not going to be super useful for Roy here, so we'll see how this plays out. That first location not going to allow 1-cost cards to get played there, and that third location is Baxter Building for +4 power on the other 2 locations for the winner. Hope Summers into the center location, and the first move card comes down as a Vulture for Roy, so that's going to get moved around a little bit and play for some big leads over in Baxter Building. With the Kitty Pryde and the Sasquatch, I think Roy will have a decent idea on what Ramnstexx is playing, though this is a deck that can sometimes support a Shang-Chi, so you do want to be a little bit weary of that, especially if you've given away your Goliath as a good final turn play into Baxter Building. That could potentially be a location that you might need to defend, but of course not the case right now. And then a War Machine. That's an actual War Machine, right? So is this a Zorn deck from Roy? Like War Machine and then Red Wing with a potential Infinite top end? There's no other random card generation that's creating that War Machine, right? And I was so in thought there, lost in thought. I'm not even sure who just snapped, but I have a feeling, yeah, it was Roy that just snapped, because Ramnstexx has to be considering what they are doing right now and if they want to stay in this game, especially after losing your Sasquatch. drawing Sam Wilson on turn 5. It's just or turn 4, but it's just a little bit too slow. Let's see if they can find a better draw this game. We see Enchantress as the tech 4 cost of choice instead of Shang-Chi, and then Galacta, Gwenpool to fill out that Zabu-ish curve. I don't think we saw Zabu on the first game. We saw Zabu in the first match, of course, but might not be playing Zabu specifically, just instead going for Kitty Pryde curve outs instead. And Hope Summers joins the hand. We've got Space Throne as location number 1, Monster Metropolis as location number 2, and location number 3 is Tia Maze once more. And that second location with a Madam Web is going to bring out a snap from Roy. That is one of the best cards in the move bounce deck. Might not even be bounce, might just be a move deck at this point, but still, Madam Web, certainly a snap condition on its own, and that is enough for Ramnstexx to decide to escape from that one and move on to game number 3, just down 2 cubes. So this could still go to either player. I feel like the playback is a little bit better at this point, but let's not jinx it. We have Hope Summers, Sam Wilson, and Triskelion to join the Enchantress in Ramnstexx hand. We've got a Nova, Lockjaw, Ironheart, and Ajax from that. Roy drops in X23. Interesting, and Wakandan Embassy is going to pump up all of these cards. We are definitely going to see Sam Wilson come down here on turn 2. Luke Cage also in Ramnstexx hand. Yeah, I mean, this deck can afford to just play a lot of random good cards. Potentially debating playing this Sam center, it looks like. Yep. We are going to see that, and then I do imagine we're going to see an Ironheart potentially come out. I mean, it's an 8-power Ironheart. We might just see the Hope Summers actually instead next turn. Oh, and that is actually, we did not see why we didn't see Ramnstexx play Sam Wilson to that empty location, because they wanted 2 different empty locations to potentially drop a Hope Summers at. That third location is something like... Oh, is this the one where your cards get +1 power for each ongoing card you have at that location? It doesn't matter what that location is, it is going to get stormed. And now I know why the War Machine is there, and the Goliath starts to make a little bit more sense. Roy has incorporated a lockdown package into this move deck. I don't know if I should say like it's the move shell with a lockdown package supplemented in, but there's definitely some good synergy between lockdown and move, because you can potentially access that stormed out location a little bit more easily than your opponent can. So there's some great synergy that the deck is already playing. We see a card get played into the Madam Web this turn rather than into the flooded location, and flooding out the Hope Summers location is going to mean that we aren't going to see that great of use out of Hope Summers throughout the rest of this game. That Hope Summers is now turned off, but 12 power in the flooded location is still pretty good. That's a 4-power dagger that can get 4 more power from moving into the flooded location. It got +2 points from Wakandan Embassy. So we could see Roy get up to 10 power in the flooded location. They're still going to need a little bit more though to get over the edge. And Enchantress onto this Madam Web. I think we could see a snap here from Ramnstexx. Let's see. Are we going to see it before the turn gets finalized here? Yes, we do. A Enchantress to take out the Madam Web. The key card from your opponent's deck is really good, and when you are showing your opponent that Enchantress in a closed deck list format, you want to make sure you're getting at least 2 cubes from that play. So this snap makes a lot of sense. Both players showing that they are competent Marvel Snap players. That dagger is going to move into the stormed location though, into the flooded location. It's not going to get the win there, but it is going to move over, putting them up to 10, and maybe like a Jeff or just a few more points from War Machine could put them over the top. Enchantress on this Madam Web does mean that Enchantress cannot hit the War Machine, but what could this be? Could this just be like a Legion? Oh, it is a Sarah from Triskelion into into the center location here. So Roy is going to have a little bit of extra energy to play with on the final turn. Oh, Enchantress had to take out their Sam Wilson. Oh, that's interesting. But this does look like such a good position here for Ramnstexx. I'm not seeing it unless there is an interesting play to be had from like a Heimdall. But I really don't see how that could be the case either. I do feel like this game's going to go to Ramnstexx. They are playing it a little bit silly on the final turn here. Lockjaw plus Kitty Pryde, so no clue what that will eventually translate into ultimately. But it is just going to translate into a retreat from Roy and 2 cubes tied up, 8 cubes apiece, I should say. 8 cubes remaining for both players as we move into round 4. Yeah, that one looked tough from Roy. I'm not exactly sure what they could get out of that dagger into the flooded location, but it didn't look great. And then the Enchantress came down to take out the Madam Web, and it started to look really not great. This hand looks pretty reasonable of a curve here for Ramnstexx. We've got the Kitty Pryde into Sam, into Elsa, into Galacta. The mini lab as this second location will prevent cards from getting added into the center location, but it will not stop the Sam shield from leaving the center location. That'll still be able to drift into Necrotia and pump up Sam Wilson there. Madam Web played into the unknown third location, which winds up being Gamma Lab. That is going to turn Madam Web into a Hulk, and unfortunately, well, not unfortunately. So Ramnstexx could turn their shield into a Hulk here, and I do think that I like that play. I think that a Hulk is going to be a little bit more value, but Roy does have Hulk supremacy here, and Iron Lad is not going to be able to move that dagger. That's intentional, so that way they can grab a third Hulk and be up 1 Hulk, 3 Hulks to 2 over on Ramnstexx, and we have not yet seen a Shang-Chi for Ramnstexx, so Roy is going to snap to that one. I think that might get a retreat. The only other play would be Galacta, and then it's going to be really tough to battle for those other, for the mini lab, really. Necrotia might be doable, especially with Galacta. But they could get Kitty Pryde in there. They could go next turn Kitty Pryde plus Gwenpool, but instead we are going to see a retreat to your opponent just having more Hulks than you. Makes a lot of sense, and we will see if... I'm assuming at this point that Ramnstexx does not have access to Shang-Chi. I don't know if we've seen his entire deck list at this point, but it would make sense to me if they have decided to play with Enchantress rather than, and Luke Cage, rather than go for any other tech. Elysium is going to be pretty nice with this Kitty Pryde. Luke Cage doesn't really do anything in the matchup. Panopticon, location number 2, could be a fine location to have a Mysterio clone, but I'm not sure what else we are getting out of value-wise there on either side of the table. We're going to see a Luke Cage and a Kitty Pryde come down this turn. Elysium is a pretty good location for move decks as well, just because it turns all of your cards into 0 cost, and we are going to see a snap come out from Roy, potentially just on the back of Elysium. Just thinking, hey, I'm going to be able to take advantage a lot over Elysium over the course of this game, and Ramnstexx is going to accept the snap. Oh, it is a storm of the third location. So we have seen all 3 locations this game, and we might be seeing a Storm Legion lockout here with an Elysium fueled curve. That is a turn 2 Storm. Galacta into the flooded location is pretty heads up, because you'll get to make use of it throughout the rest of the game. This is resigned to losing the flooded location, but I think that Ramnstexx has to be resigned to losing the flooded location here regardless. They are putting 5 points there, so Roy will need to get a few more points, but that could be through War Machine or just through some random points later on. I don't think that's going to be super contested. We are going to see the War Machine come down, but the Enchantress is at the ready. We are going to see this Enchantress come down and tag the War Machine. this turn, which means that Roy really has to play to the flooded location this turn, or they aren't going to really be able to grab too much value out of there. Yeah, this is the easiest Enchantress ever, and we could see the Kitty Pryde come down before that, just so that way the Galacta buff goes on the Kitty Pryde and it gives you a little bit more flexibility, puts more of your points in your hand. Either way, seems like a fine play. Just making sure we get out that War Machine. I don't know what else this deck can do. I mean, if we see like a Madam Web or something come down into Elysium, oh, if this is a Madam Web center, oh, it's a Cosmo. They do have the Cosmo. I brought that up on the first turn. That is a Cosmo to protect the War Machine from this Enchantress. And with that, this is all of a sudden looking pretty dang good for Roy. They're not going to get this War Machine done. If we see a Legion come out here, of course, then it's actually just done. It might not be a Legion though. There's still a lot of other different things that Roy can have. And one other thing I don't really think I touched on, but it also, I might have touched on it already. If I did, apologies. The Goliath makes a lot more sense with this Cosmo and this Storm. Right now on the final turn, there is only one location that Ramnstexx could potentially play an on reveal card, which is Elysium. So that is a great location to Goliath for Roy, but it's not like this is like a Shang-Chi deck necessarily. This is a Sasquatch deck, and you can't really Goliath a Sasquatch. You can Goliath this Gwen, but then you're not Legioning, at least. I mean, we could see an Goliath come down into an Elysium right here for Roy. I don't think that that would be that crazy, especially if Roy really has been paying attention to what Ramnstexx has played so far this game, because then there's really only on reveal cards that you want to deal with before the final turn. But I think I would still be a little bit afeared of Shang-Chi. Nope, this is a Legion. That is a full lockout there from Roy. They are going to take 4 cubes off of Ramnstexx, who is probably just waiting to hit this retreat button because this game is already over. The Kitty Pryde ain't gonna do nothing. It wasn't even played, but it is not going to make it onto the final board. There it is, the quick retreat and a 4 cube loss from Ramnstexx, now down to 3 cubes up against Roy's 8. And this is a deck that we could be seeing some significant play for in the Golden Gauntlet 2 that we did not see in the first iteration of the Golden Gauntlet, but Storm being back down to a 3-cost card could certainly make a splash. We're going to see Zabu come down, get that +2 power over in Lake Hellas. We could see a turn 2 Mysterio come down. That second location, I believe, is no big cards can get played. No 4, 5, or 6 can get played at that location. And I don't know who snapped, to be honest. I was trying to figure out what that center location was. And that center location is a spot for Angela. They're just going to go for Angela on the right. Galacta might come down onto the right for Ramnstexx. That's a 3-cost Galacta because of Zabu. That could get played into Fisk Tower. That seems reasonable. Looks good. The Madam Web is protected from getting Enchantress because we have the location there, I believe, that says 4, 5, and 6 cost cards cannot get played into that location. And it looks like we're just going to ignore this stormed out location completely, instead opting for a Gwenpool before the Mysterio is out of the hand. And how many Gwenpool targets do we get on the Mysterio? 0. That is a bummer. Vulture is going to get knocked over into the Madam Web and can get slung over into the flooded location again. That is, of course, quite good, but it definitely stinks to not have Mysterio receive any buffs here at all. So now we are eyeing up a Hope Summers and then a Mysterio, or maybe just a Mysterio and then a Hope Summers. Well, you could play it in the other order, I suppose, but doesn't even care to do so. Seems like, yeah, we're just going to get a few more points over into the center. Okay, yeah, maybe we're going to undo that briefly. It's tough. It's tough. And at this point, Ramnstexx, they're in for 3 cubes. I don't know if they can actually win this game, though, sadly. But no point in retreating. We are past the point of no return here. We are playing this game for 3 cubes, so let's see how it goes. And we are going to see Mysterio, followed by a Hope Summers. Again, a small sequencing, we'll say miscalculation there, but we are going to see the Mysterio clone receive +3, and then that center Mysterio actually has 4 power. Ghost Spider is going to bring the Vulture back into the center, and then War Machine is going to free up that flooded location, allowing them to move the Vulture into Lake Hellas for 27 points over in Lake Hellas, and then all they need to do is play a few points over into the flooded location, and this is looking pretty good. We could see like a Cosmo come down over in Lake Hellas to protect the Vulture, and then 3 more points from, like, I don't know, could even just be like an Aranya and a Dagger over into the flooded location. Even that will be enough to seal the deal for Roy. I'm pretty sure this is a win. We do only have 1 big payoff card in the form of Vulture, but I do think that with that Vulture in the Madam Web location, Roy will be able to find a way to close it out right here. Let's see. Ramnstexx just dropping an Enchantress and then a Sam Wilson, not committing too many points into the center location, just assuming they're going to be able to lock that one up, though. The Sam might be receiving the Galacta. Well, we'll find out. We'll see what order they play these cards in right now. No, that is going to be the Enchantress receiving the Galacta buff, and then Sam taking the center location up to 15 with that Mysterio clone also being there. So what is Roy? I mean, like I said, Roy just has to put 3 points over in the flooded location, and they're going to move the Vulture over into there and then potentially play an Alioth center. I don't think that's going to do it. No, I think we're going into round 7 here, because an Alioth center will not overcome. That'll put Roy up to 12 points. Oh, it's an Infinite. Oh, okay. It's an Infinite. That is going to be 23 points, and the match and the series and the league to Roy. Congratulations on winning Snap Wars. I wanted to wrap this video up by taking a look at all of the deck lists played by both of our finalists, and we're going to kick that off with this Sasquatch list here from Ramnstexx. Sasquatch still holds a fond place in my heart because I got to do the community spotlight for it on the official Marvel Snap YouTube channel, but it does not hold that fond of a place in the Marvel Snap metagame. It was barely played in the first Golden Gauntlet. 1 player played it, and they did not win with it. So Sasquatch definitely is not that high on a lot of people's radars. It's cool to see it here. It does still do some cool things. Sam Wilson has some interesting interactions with Elsa, and Gwenpool plus Mysterio can still be very powerful. We didn't get to see that happen in these matches, and ultimately it winds up falling a little bit short. There is a little bit of room for what tech you can choose to include in it. Ramnstexx chose to include Luke Cage and Enchantress, and they were in dire need of a Shang-Chi over the course of some of those games. Typically, we also see Mockingbird in this deck, and Mockingbird gets the discount from Mysterio, the Sam Wilson shields, and then also usually Hawkeye, Kate Bishop arrows. But no Mockingbird to be found in this one, and instead just going for Sasquatch at the top of the curve and playing it maybe a little bit more, I don't want to say like consistently without the Mockingbird, but just like leveled off, going for Angela instead, a little bit more of a flat power level. Wasn't able to get there. And I also want to take a look at Ramnstexx's other deck list, because this one is wild, and I did not realize it. I might have thought about this about like pretty much towards the end of the commentary that I was doing, but I have actually seen this deck before. I've played this deck before, and what I remember feeling about this Phoenix Force list, which I've seen played by Jeet, I believe. They are a big, they've probably played every version of Phoenix Force, but what I felt when I had played this deck in the past was that it kind of lacked weight. It lacked enough ways to win locations, which is super important in Marvel Snap. And I think that this build from Ramnstexx actually fixes a number of those problems, with Shang-Chi as a means to win locations, and then also the Hood's Demons as some additional way to get power. And then also Iron Patriot can potentially just give you a card that you can use to spike a random location. I do think that this build is actually reasonable, and I kind of just feel like Ramnstexx got a little bit unlucky that their Cassandra Nova kept meeting one of Roy's Shang-Chis out of Arishem, because this list looks pretty reasonably suited to take care of Arishem decks. I have also seen some other slightly different builds of this deck that will also play Darkhawk and then will run Korg and Rock Slide. And I think that when I had played this deck, I might be wrong, but I think that I played this deck back when Rock Slide cost 3, or potentially when Black Widow was an on reveal. But I'm not sure if which of those was possible, if either of them was, maybe neither of them was. But I think that gave me just and then also played Darkhawk on the top of the curve. I might have said that. And you really are hoping that the Nico's Copia card goes a long way. But this has two different interesting routes with like the Nico Copia card, but then also the Venom destroying some of your stuff and having Fire Hair re-trigger it while Venom also gets the value. I thought there were some neat lines there that Ramnstexx had available to them. Just didn't work out, unfortunately, with that Arishem deck always drawing the Shang-Chi. Let's take a look at this Arishem list now from Roy, because you might not have seen every card from it throughout the course of those matches, but here it is in all of its glory. I think that we saw most of this. I don't know that we saw the Quinjet, the Iron Patriot, and the Enchantress, but honestly, I think that we saw most of this, and Arishem is fairly stock across the board for the most part right now, with Quinjet and Loki really being some of the flexible slots that this deck has access to right now. And we'll talk about both of those cards in a moment, but really just playing the full suite of 4-cost cards here. Sometimes we do see a little bit more on the 4-cost. Forget what else we see, because I don't think this has really been a Gwenpool deck recently. I think that we really do just see these 3 4-cost cards recently, and then Iron Patriot, Valentina being the most common. I guess the Valentina 6-cost card is the next 4-cost card in the deck, right? But these are both really nice. They curve out well with Iron Patriot, then playing a Galacta to win the Iron Patriot battle and getting a nice cheap card that you can use to snowball in the other locations, and Valentina just curving off so nicely out of Arishem. I do reasonably like Isan as the top end, and Eliathan, Mockingbird, and Legion. Those ones are all pretty straightforward. This is one thing that I did want to talk about, though. Loki. Loki specifically into all of the tech Thanos, all of the strange Supreme Thanos. I think that Loki matches up really well into that deck, because that deck is just a bunch of, it's a bunch of stones, and then it's a bunch of cards that you'd love to grab from Loki, because they're just kind of good stuff. And as long as a bunch of people are just playing like good stuff cards, I think that Loki is pretty swell across the board, and yeah, pretty nice. I tend to not use Quinjet in my Isan Arishem lists myself, though you're playing a huge deck. It's fine to play both, and then you draw one or the other, and both of those allow you to take advantage of your generated cards in different ways. And then I also wanted to leave this one for last because this deck list kind of surprised me, but I don't think it should have. I have not faced against this deck that much on the ladder myself personally. But I think I'm going to test this a little bit more today, and this might be, or if not this exact list, this might be the archetype that I take into the Golden Gauntlet tomorrow, because I kind of just forgot about it, but it is really good. I really like the Storm War Machine Legion package now that Storm is a 3-cost card again, and I think that Move as a supplement to that has a lot of synergy. Golden Gauntlet will be open deck list, so people will know to expect the Infinite, but will that also just be like a scary card that people will be afraid of even when you don't have it? There's an interesting thing about the Infinite where I think like people know that War Machine decks have it sometimes, but they just don't want to believe that it's in your hand, even though it's just as likely to be in your hand as any other card would be in Marvel Snap on the final turn of the game. So I think that this deck is really good. I would be surprised if we don't see a bunch of this tomorrow. And I definitely want to run some of the numbers on it because I have not been seeing it at all on the ladder. I'm not at Infinite yet. Season just started. But I do think that this has got to be a top pick from a bunch of top players, Roy included. Of course, I just wanted to run through these deck lists real quick, just so that way you could see them, especially the Arishem list and maybe some of Ramnstexx lists that you did not get to see in all of their glory here, because this is a wacky one. Definitely recommend trying it out. It's a lot of fun, and there's even some other cards that you could potentially consider in some of these slots, but I will leave that for the Brewers for today. That's going to be it for me. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'm NoLucksGiven. Peace.